The scream tore through the twilight, sharp and desperate, slicing the cheerful hum of Willow Creek Park like a blade. It wasn't the playful shriek of a child on a slide or the exaggerated wail of a toddler denied a second cookie. This was raw, primal fear, and it stopped every parent, jogger, and dog walker in their tracks. In the fading light, a small figure stumbled near the swings, a girl no older than 7, her ponytail whipping as she scrambled backward. Beside her, a German shepherd lunged, not with the clumsy enthusiasm of a family pet, but with the lethal precision of a predator. The man before Thema's stranger in a faded jacket froze, his outstretched hand trembling as the dog's low growl VY brat through the air. What happened next would become legend in Willow Creek, a story whispered over coffee cups and shared in breathless posts online. But for now, the park held its breath, caught in the split second where innocence hung in the balance. It had been an ordinary Saturday, the kind where spring finally shrugs off winter's grip, coaxing families out of their homes to bask in the warmth. Willow Creek Park buzzed with life. Kites danced above the soccer fields. The ice cream truck's jingle looped endlessly, and children swarmed the playground like ants on a sugar spill. Among them was 8-year-old Ava Harper, her hazel eyes bright with the kind of joy only a perfect spring day could spark. She darted across the wood-chip-covered playground, her sneakers kicking up tiny clouds of dust, while her shadow, a German shepherd named Titan, kept pace with unwavering loyalty. Titan wasn't just any dog. 3 years ago, he'd been Officer Daniel Carter's partner, a police K-9 who'd faced down armed dealers and sniffed out hidden explosives. A near-fatal injury, a knife wound from a botched raid, had ended his career, Leah VYing him with a faint limp and a forced retirement. When Ava's mother, Sarah Harper, a pediatric nurse with a soft spot for second chances, heard about Titan's need for a home, she'd volunteered to foster him. What was meant to be temporary became permanent the moment Ava, then 5, curled up against him during a power outage, her small hands clutching his fur as thunder rattled the windows. From that night, Titan was hers, and she was his. "Throw it harder, Ava," Sarah called from a nearby bench, her voice warm but distracted as she scrolled through work emails on her phone. Ava grinned, winding up like a pitcher and hurling a slobbery tennis ball toward the towering maples at the park's edge. Titan shot after it, his movements fluid despite the slight hitch in his gait. He wasn't as fast as he'd been in his prime, but every stride carried the weight of his training, deliberate, controlled, purposeful. Sarah glanced up, her smile fading as she noticed Titan's posture shift. The dog had retrieved the ball but paused, his ears twitching forward, his body still as stone. His dark eyes locked onto something beyond the playground, scanning the clusters of parents and kids with an intensity Sarah hadn't seen since the early days, when he'd paced their house like a soldier on watch. "Titan, what's up, buddy?" she murmured, slipping her phone into her pocket. Ava, Obly VYS, clapped her hands. "Come on, boy. Bring it back." But Titan didn't move. His nose twitched, sampling the air, and a low rumble stirred in his chest, too soft for Ava to hear, but enough to make Sarah's pulse quicken. She followed his gaze to a man standing near the park's entrance, half hidden by the shadow of a maple. He was unremarkable at first glance. Mid-30s jeans, a gray jacket, a baseball cap tilted low. He held a phone, but his eyes kept drifting to the playground, lingering on the children with a focus that felt wrong. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of working in chaotic ERs, prickled. "Ava, honey, stay close," she called, her tone sharper than intended. Ava skipped back, the ball forgotten, and Titan shadowed her, positioning himself between her and the distant figure. The move was subtle, but Sarah noticed. She'd seen Titan do this before once, when a delivery driver lingered too long at their gate, and again when a neighbor's argument spilled into the street. It was the stance of a protector, a silent vow that nothing would touch Ava while he was there. The man adjusted his cap and stepped forward, his movements casual but deliberate. Titan's muscles tensed, his hackles rising just enough to signal alertness. Sarah stood, Her hand hovering near the leash clipped to her belt. "Ava, let's head to the slides for a bit," she said, forcing a smile. Ava nodded, but her eyes flicked to Titan, sensing his unease. "Is he okay, Mom?" "He's fine, sweetie. Just keeping an eye out." Sarah's voice was steady, but her mind raced. She scanned the park for other adults, noting a jogger pausing to tie his shoe, a mom pushing a stroller, a group of teens tossing a frisbee. No one else seemed to notice the man, who was now closer, lingering near a bench with a clear VYEW of the swings. He wasn't with a child, carried no picnic basket or soccer ball, nothing to mark him as part of the park's lively chaos. Just a man watching. 3 years earlier, Daniel Carter had sat in a sterile vet clinic, his hands clenched as he watched Titan fight for his life. The raid had been a disaster meth lab bust that turned deadly when a suspect pulled a blade. Titan had taken the hit meant for Carter, his jaws locking onto the man's arm even as blood soaked his fur. The suspect was cuffed, the lab dismantled, but Titan's career was over. "He'll walk again," the vet had said, "but he's done as a K-9. Too much damage to the shoulder." Carter, who'd trusted Titan with his life more times than he could count, refused to let him be kenneled or worse. When Sarah Harper, a nurse who'd patched up Carter after a bar fight years ago, offered to take Titan, it felt like the only choice. The transition hadn't been easy. Titan was no lapdog. He'd patrol the Harpers' small house at night, checking doors and windows, his eyes glinting with the intensity of a machine that hadn't been switched off. Sarah had worried he'd never adjust, that his drive was too strong for a quiet suburban life. But Ava changed everything. The girl, small for her age but fearless, saw Titan not as a weapon but as a friend. She'd sneak him bits of her breakfast, read him picture books, and once, when Sarah found her asleep with her head on Titan's side, the dog's eyes met hers with a softness she hadn't thought possible. He'd found his new mission, Ava. Back at the park, the man calling himself Jake, when he finally spoke, had moved closer, now near the ice cream cart that had just rolled up. He bought 2 cones, 1 chocolate, 1 strawberry, and lingered, his eyes scanning the playground. Titan tracked him, abandoning the tennis ball to stay within arm's reach of Ava. Sarah's unease grew, but a call from the hospital interrupted her thoughts. "I know it's my day off," she said into the phone, her voice low, "but can it wait? I'm with my daughter." She kept Ava in sight, but her attention split, and that was all the opening Jake needed. "Hey, kid," he called to Ava, who was pushing herself higher on a swing. "Got an extra ice cream here. Strawberry, me nephew didn't want it. You like strawberry, right?" His smile was practiced, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Ava slowed her swing, her feet dragging in the wood chips. My mom says I can't take stuff from people I don't know," she said, her voice small but firm. Titan's ears flattened, his body shifting to block Ava from Jake's line of sight. The dog's tail, usually wagging during play, went rigid. "Smart mom," Jake said, his smile tightening. "But I'm not a stranger now, am I? Name's Jake. What's yours?" He took a step closer, the ice cream dripping in the heat. "I'm Ava," she said hesitantly, then pointed to Titan. "This is my dog, Titan." The German shepherd let out a low, warning rumble, not a growl, but a signal that carried the weight of his training. Jake's eyes flicked to the dog, his expression souring. "Nice dog. Why don't you come grab this ice cream? You can stay there." Sarah, still on the phone, caught the tail end of the conversation and ended the call abruptly. "Ava, come here," she called, striding toward the swings. But a sudden commotion at the jungle Jaima boy stuck at the top, his mother shouting for help, drew her attention. "Stay right there, Ava," she said, jogging to assist, her instincts as a nurse overriding her caution for a moment. Jake seized the opportunity. "Your mom's busy," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've got something even better than ice cream in my Kara puppy. Cutest little guy, loves kids. Want to see him?" He stepped closer, discarding 1 cone in a trash can, but keeping the other as a lure. Ava's face clouded with doubt. "My mom said to stay here," she said, backing up until her shoulders brushed the swing's chains. Titan moved with her, his body a shield, his eyes never vying Jake. The man's smile vanished, replaced by a hard edge. It'll just take a second, kid. The puppy's shy, won't wait around. Titan's hackles rose, the fur along his spine bristling. His training years of detecting threats, reading body language, sensing intent kicked in fully. Jake's tone, his posture, the way his hand twitched toward his pocket, it was all wrong. The dog let out a sharp, authoritative bark, loud enough to turn heads. A nearby dad, pushing a stroller, paused, frowning. "Everything okay over there?" he called. "I'm fine," Ava said, her voice trembling. He's talking about a puppy, but Titan doesn't like him. Jake's charm snapped back into place. "Just chatting," he said to the dad, raising his hands innocently. "Beautiful day, right?" The dad hesitated, then moved on, but his glance lingered. Jake's eyes narrowed as he turned back to Ava. "Look, kid, we can do this the easy way." He didn't finish. Titan surged forward, not biting, but using his 90-pound frame to ram Jake's legs, knocking him off balance. The man stumbled, the ice cream falling to the ground. "What the hell?" he spat, his hand DVYing into his jacket. Titan's response was immediate. A precise leap, jaws clamping onto Jake's wrist with controlled force. The man yelped as a small, canister pepper spray clattered to the wood chips. Sarah, alerted by the bark, sprinted back, her heart pounding. "Ava!" she shouted, show vying through a growing crowd of onlookers. She saw Titan pinning Jake. The man's face twisted in pain and panic. "Get this dog off me," he screamed. "He's attacking me. He tried to grab me." Ava cried, running to her mother. Sarah pulled her close, her eyes blazing as she faced Jake. "Who are you?" she demanded. Titan maintained his grip, his training EV-wide dent in the calculated pressure not enough to break skin, but enough to immobilize. A park security guard arrived, radio crackling. "What's going on?" he asked, eyeing Titan warily. "This man tried to take my daughter," Sarah said, her voice shaking with fury. "My dog stopped him." "He's lying," Jake protested. "I was just offering ice cream." But the canister on the ground told a different story. The guard radioed for police, and within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Titan held his position until an officer approached. Then in Ava's shaky command, "Titan, hold," he eased his grip, transitioning to a VY gallant stance, ready to act if needed. Jake, sensing a chance, twisted free and bolted for the parking lot, Leah VYing behind a dropped wallet and a set of keys. Sarah clutched Ava, torn between relief and fear. But Titan wasn't done. With a glance at Ava, as if confirming she was safe, he took off after Jake, his limp barely slowing him. The chase was breathtaking. Parkgoers froze, phones out, recording as the German shepherd wove through the lot, cutting angles like a missile locked on target. Jake reached a beat-up sedan, fumbling with the door, but Titan was faster. The dog launched, hitting Jake's back in a controlled takedown that sent him sprawling. Titan didn't bite this time, instead circling with a series of sharp, intimidating barks, keeping Jake pinned until officers arrived. "That's no pet," one officer muttered, watching Titan's precise movements. "That's a K9. Sarah, holding Ava's hand, reached the scene as officers cuffed Jake. A search of his pockets revealed zip ties, a roll of duct tape, and a switchblade tools, a predator. "Friendly guy," an officer said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Another officer, older, squinted at Titan. "Holy hell, is that Carter's dog?" "Titan," Sarah nodded, explaining how they'd adopted him. The officer shook his head in awe. "This dog's a hero. Took a knife for Carter back in 22, still closed the case." As the scene calmed, a familiar figure arrived. Daniel Carter, now a detective, his face lighting up at the sight of his old partner. "Titan, you old warhorse," he said, kneeling to greet the dog. Titan's tail wagged, but he didn't leave Ava's side. Carter turned to Sarah. He was trained to read threats most cops miss. "Saved your girl today." The police later identified Jake as Nathan Wells, a drifter with a history of luring children in parks across 3 states. His car held a chilling collection: children's toys, a Polaroid camera, and a map marked with other parks. Titan's actions had stopped him before he could add Ava to his list. That evening, as news vans circled and social media exploded with videos of Titan's takedown, Sarah sat with Ava on their couch. Titan sprawled across their feet. He knew, didn't he? Ava whispered, stroking his ears. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. He's always known. The department planned a ceremony to honor Titan, a rare nod to a retired canine. But for Sarah and Ava, the real reward was the dog who'd chosen them, who'd carried his training and loyalty into a new life. Titan wasn't just a hero. He was family, a guardian whose instincts had rewritten their story's ending. And as the moon rose over Willow Creek, casting shadows through their window, Titan's steady breathing promised he'd be ready if danger came again.